I'm Sylvia, 35, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage with James. 7 beautiful years together, building our life in Boston, planning our future. But lately, something's been off. The late nights, the business trips, the way he guards his phone like it contains state secrets. When he told me about another mandatory training in Miami, I called his office. James took vacation days, the receptionist said. My stomach dropped. If you're watching this story about how my world unraveled, tell me where you're from, and subscribe to see how I caught my husband in his web of lies. I met James at a charity fundraiser 9 years ago. I was volunteering at the registration table when he walked in wearing a charcoal gray suit that perfectly matched his eyes. He had this confident smile that immediately caught my attention as he wrote a generous donation check. When he handed it to me, our fingers touched briefly, and I felt that spark people talk about, but I never believed in until that moment. "Do you volunteer here often?" he asked, lingering at my table while others moved on. "This is actually my first time," I replied, trying to sound professional despite the butterflies in my stomach. "I'm a school counselor by day." His eyes lit up. "That's incredible. It takes a special kind of person to guide young minds." By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers, and he called the very next day to ask me to dinner. Our courtship was like something from a movie: thoughtful dates, deep conversations under starry skies, surprise weekend getaways. 6 months of dating, and I knew he was the one. Another 6 months later, he proposed during a sunset sail on Boston Harbor. Our wedding was everything I had dreamed of as a little girl. We held it at Silver Lake Lodge with white chairs set up on the green lawn, sloping down to the water. My father walked me down the aisle as James watched with tears in his eyes. Our vows were personal, heartfelt promises that I believed would last forever. The reception lasted until dawn, our closest friends and family celebrating what everyone called a perfect match. The early years of marriage were blissful. We purchased our dream home in a quiet Boston suburb, a colonial with a wraparound porch and enough bedrooms for the children we planned to have. Each room represented a piece of our future we were building together. The nursery remained empty longer than we expected, but we remained hopeful, focusing on our careers while trying for a baby. James thrived at Anderson Financial Consulting. He started as a junior consultant, but quickly rose through the ranks with his analytical mind and charismatic client presentations. Each promotion came with celebratory dinners, champagne, and dreams spoken aloud across candlelit tables. I supported him through late nights and weekend work, understanding his drive to succeed. Meanwhile, I found fulfillment in my role as a high school counselor. There's something profoundly rewarding about helping teenagers navigate the complexities of growing up. I specialized in working with students from troubled homes, perhaps because my own childhood had been difficult after my parents' bitter divorce. James always said he admired my compassion, my ability to connect with kids others had given up on. We built a comfortable life with shared dreams that seemed within reach. We talked about having 2 children, traveling to all 7 continents before turning 50, and retiring early to a cottage in Maine. Our social calendar was always full. Dinner parties with colleagues, barbecues with neighbors, holidays split between his family in Chicago and mine in Boston. Our friends called us relationship goals, the couple who still held hands after years together, who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, who balanced each other perfectly. His logical, ambitious nature complemented my emotional, nurturing one. We rarely argued, and when we did, it was resolved with calm discussions and compromise. Looking back, I should have noticed when things began to change. About a year ago, James started keeping his phone face down on tables. His texts and calls would send him stepping outside for better reception. He changed his phone password from my birthday to something I didn't know. Little things easily explained away. I told myself not to be paranoid, that trust was the foundation of our marriage. I remember one night finding him in our home office at 3 a.m, laptop slamming shut when I appeared in the doorway. "Just finishing some work," he said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. I chose to believe him because the alternative was too painful to consider. That's the thing about trust. It can become a blindfold if you're not careful. The changes in James became impossible to ignore about 3 months ago. The frequency of his business trips doubled, then tripled. Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco. Cities where his company had clients, so it seemed plausible. But the explanations grew increasingly vague. "It's a complex project," he would say when I asked for details. "Too boring to explain." I noticed his expenses increasing as well. A $2,000 watch appeared on his wrist. A gift from a grateful client, he claimed. Designer suits replaced his regular wardrobe. Weekly haircuts at an expensive salon. A new cologne that smelled like someone I didn't recognize. The emotional distance between us expanded into a chasm. Where we once talked for hours about our days, our dreams, our fears, conversation became surface level. "How was work?" "Fine." "Any interesting cases?" "Not really." The silence during dinners grew heavier, filled only by the scraping of forks against plates. Intimacy dwindled until it disappeared entirely. When I initiated, there were always excuses. Headaches, early meetings, exhaustion. When I tried to discuss this change, James made me feel like I was imagining problems. "You're overthinking things, Sil," he would say with that patronizing tone that had never been part of our relationship before. "I'm just stressed about work. It'll get better soon." I started doubting my perceptions, wondering if I was being needy or insecure. This self-doubt was new and uncomfortable, making me question my worth as both a counselor and a wife. The phone calls became a regular occurrence, James stepping outside to take them, his voice a low murmur I couldn't decipher. Once I heard him laugh in a way he hadn't laughed with me in months. When he returned, his explanation was always work-related, but the smile lingering on his face told a different story. "Client crisis averted," he would say, pocketing his phone where I couldn't see it. James began missing family gatherings and events with friends, things he'd never skipped before. My sister's birthday dinner canceled because of urgent client needs. Our friend's anniversary party missed due to report deadlines. My school's fundraiser, where I was being honored for my counseling program, abandoned for a last-minute conference call. I confided in my best friend Lisa over coffee one rainy afternoon. We'd been friends since college, and she knew both James and me better than almost anyone. "I don't know what's happening, but something doesn't feel right," I admitted, stirring my latte absently. Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Marriages go through phases, Sylvia. Tom and I barely spoke during his law school finals. It passed." "This feels different," I insisted, but even as I said it, I wondered if I was making mountains out of molehills. "Men can be distant when work gets intense," Lisa reasoned. "It doesn't mean he's—" She trailed off, not wanting to say what we were both thinking. "Cheating," I finished her thought, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "I don't think James would do that. We've always been honest with each other." Lisa nodded reassuringly, but I caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Just talk to him. Communication solves most problems." I tried. That weekend I prepared James's favorite meal, filet mignon with truffle mashed potatoes, and opened a bottle of the Cabernet we'd been saving. I wore the blue dress he always complimented and set the dining room table with candles. "What's the occasion?" he asked when he came home, his tone suggesting suspicion rather than pleasure. "No occasion. I just thought we could use a night to reconnect." The dinner started well. We talked about neutral topics, a book I was reading, a new restaurant downtown. But when I gently brought up the changes, I'd noticed his demeanor transformed instantly. "Not this again, Sylvia," he said, putting down his fork with an annoyed clatter. "I'm working hard for our future, for the family we want to have. Can't you understand that?" The conversation ended with me apologizing for bringing it up. Later that night, I cried silently in the bathroom, wondering when I had become someone who apologized for having feelings. Then came the announcement about Miami. "I have to attend a mandatory training next week. James said casually over breakfast, not looking up from his phone. The whole department is going. It's in Miami, so at least the weather will be nice. Miami? For how long? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. 5 days, Monday through Friday. The company arranged everything. Something in his tone, a slight nervousness perhaps, triggered my suspicions again. But I smiled and nodded, determined not to be the paranoid wife. That evening, I overheard him on the phone in our home office door, slightly ajar. "I can't wait to see you," he said in a hushed, intimate tone I once thought was reserved for me. 5 whole days. Yes, it's all arranged. She doesn't suspect anything. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain he would hear it. I retreated to our bedroom, mind racing with possibilities each more painful than the last. The next day, I noticed a Miami hotel confirmation in our shared email account, but it wasn't a company booking. It was made with our personal credit card. That's when I knew I needed to find out the truth. The morning James left for Miami, I kissed him goodbye with a smile that felt like broken glass on my lips. He promised to call when he landed, casually mentioning that cell reception might be spotty at the conference center. As soon as his car disappeared down our street, I sat at our kitchen table, hands shaking as I dialed his office. Each ring seemed to last an eternity. "Anderson Financial Consulting, how may I direct your call?" The receptionist's cheerful voice made my stomach tighten. "Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, James's wife," I said, forcing normalcy into my voice. "I'm trying to send him some documents for his training in Miami, but I seem to have misplaced the details. Could you confirm where it's being held?" The pause that followed lasted only seconds, but felt like years. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson, but there's no training in Miami this week. James took vacation days. He put them in the system last month." My vision blurred. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Oh, my mistake," I managed to say. "Thank you for your help." I hung up and immediately ran to the bathroom, where I vomited until there was nothing left but bitter bile. My body knew the truth before my mind could fully process it. With trembling hands, I went to our home computer and pulled up our credit card statements. There it was, a flight to Miami not paid by his company. The hotel reservation at Sunset Palms Resort, a luxury couple's retreat according to their website, not a conference venue. Dinner reservations at romantic restaurants. I searched his email, finding confirmation for a sunset cruise for 2. "Perfect for couples," the description read. My husband had planned a romantic getaway, just not with me. I tried calling James. Straight to voicemail. I texted asking him to call urgently. No response. Every unanswered call confirmed what I already knew but couldn't bring myself to accept. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced our home, the home we had chosen together, decorated together, filled with memories that now seemed like elaborate props in a play where I was the only one who didn't know the script. I called my sister Amanda at dawn, my voice hoarse from crying. "He's not at a training, Amanda. He's on vacation in Miami. He lied to me." Amanda, 5 years my senior and infinitely wiser in the ways of the world, didn't waste time with platitudes. "You need concrete proof, Sylvia, before you confront him." "What do you mean?" "I know someone, a private investigator. He's discreet professional. He helped my friend Caroline when she suspected her business partner was embezzling." My initial reaction was revulsion. A private investigator felt sordid, like something from a sleazy movie. "I can't spy on my husband." "He's already lying to you," Amanda pointed out gently. "You deserve to know the truth, whatever it is." We debated for hours. My counselor training made me value direct communication over surveillance. But how could I have an honest conversation with someone who was actively deceiving me? By that afternoon, I had made my decision. Amanda texted me a number, and with shaking fingers, I called Detective Marcus Williams. "I can be in Boston tomorrow morning," he said after I explained my situation, his voice matter-of-fact, but not unkind. "Bring whatever information you have about your husband's whereabouts." The next 3 days were the longest of my life. While James sent casual texts about intensive workshops and networking events, I met with a stranger in a coffee shop to discuss how best to catch my husband cheating. Detective Williams didn't match my mental image of a private investigator. There was nothing of the rumpled trench coat or world-weary cynicism I expected. Instead, he was a former police detective in his 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle demeanor that put me instantly at ease. "I understand how difficult this is, Mrs. Henderson," he said, as we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe far from my neighborhood. "Most clients find this process uncomfortable at first." I pushed a folder across the table containing everything I'd gathered: James's flight information, the hotel reservation, his supposed itinerary. "I feel like I'm betraying him," I admitted, unable to meet the detective's eyes. "In my experience," he replied carefully, "the betrayal has usually already occurred before my services are required. You're simply seeking the truth. There's no shame in that." He explained his process. He would fly to Miami that afternoon, check into the same resort, and conduct discreet surveillance. He would document anything relevant with photos and notes, but promised not to interfere or make his presence known. What if I'm wrong?" I asked, voicing my deepest hope. "What if there's some explanation I haven't considered?" Detective Williams smiled kindly. "Then you'll have peace of mind. Either way, you'll have the facts, not just fears and suspicions." He promised to contact me the following day with an initial report. After he left, I sat alone, wondering if I had crossed a line from which there was no return. But the alternative, continuing to live with gnawing doubt and gaslighting, seemed worse. The first call came at noon the next day. "I've confirmed your husband is at Sunset Palms Resort," Detective Williams said without preamble. "He checked in 2 days ago." Is he alone?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "No, Mrs. Henderson. He's with a woman. I've taken some preliminary photos. Would you like me to send them?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Yes, please." Moments later, my phone pinged with incoming images. With trembling fingers, I opened the first photo. James. My husband sat at a poolside bar, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful. Long blonde hair, slender figure in a red bikini. They were laughing, glasses of champagne in hand. The casual intimacy between them was unmistakable. I ran to the bathroom and threw up again, my body rejecting the visual evidence of my husband's betrayal. When I returned to my phone, more photos awaited. James and the mystery woman walking hand in hand on the beach, dining at a restaurant, sharing a cabana. I called Detective Williams back, my voice hollow. "Who is she?" "I'm working on identification," he replied. "I've taken clear photos and can run them through facial recognition software. With your permission, I'll continue surveillance." That evening, he called again. "The woman's name is Jessica Carlisle," he said. "Based on social media profiles, she appears to work at Anderson Financial Consulting in the marketing department. They don't appear to be in the same direct reporting line." A coworker. Someone he saw every day. Someone who might have been in our home at company parties. The betrayal deepened. "They're sharing the oceanfront suite." Detective Williams continued, his voice professional but gentle. "It's one of the resort's luxury accommodations. I've documented them entering and leaving together multiple times." The next day brought more evidence. The detective had accessed public social media posts from Jessica. Her Instagram showed carefully cropped photos of romantic meals and sunsets, the Miami vacation, without showing who she was with. But one post made my blood run cold. 6 months and counting with my soulmate. Some things are worth waiting for. Secret love. 6 months. While I had been worrying about our fertility issues, planning our future, supporting his career, my husband had been building a relationship with another woman. The detective dug deeper, finding evidence of a secret credit card James had been using for gifts. Jewelry, weekend getaways, designer lingerie. None of it for me. On the final day of surveillance, Detective Williams sent a video. I sat on our bed, the bed James and I had shared for 7 years, and pressed play with numb fingers. The footage showed James and Jessica by the resort pool at sunset. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the tender gesture so familiar it made me physically ache. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but a passionate kiss between lovers. Her arms wrapped around his neck as he pulled her close. When they separated, he said something that made her laugh and rest her head on his shoulder. I watched the video 3 times, each viewing driving the truth deeper. The man I had built my life around, who had promised to love and honor me, was living a double life, and I had been too trusting to see it. "I believe this constitutes sufficient evidence," Detective Williams said when he called. "I'll be returning to Boston tomorrow. Would you like me to compile a formal report?" "Yes," I replied, my voice stronger than I expected. "I want everything documented." That night, I sat in our darkened living room until dawn, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal, plotting my next move. James was scheduled to return Friday evening. I had 3 days to prepare, and I used every minute strategically. The initial shock had given way to a cold clarity I didn't recognize in myself. First, I cleaned our home meticulously, as if I could scrub away the pain along with the dust. I changed the sheets on our bed, wondering how many times he had lain next to me thinking of her. I arranged fresh flowers in the dining room and bought ingredients for his favorite meal. The perfect picture of a welcoming wife. I collected every piece of evidence in a folder. The credit card statements, hotel reservations, Detective Williams' photographs, and reports. I made copies of everything and stored them in my sister's home just in case. I rehearsed what I would say standing before the bathroom mirror, practicing a calm I didn't feel. "I know about Jessica," I would say, watching his face for the moment realization hit. I practiced until I could say her name without my voice breaking. The house felt like a stage set, and I was preparing for the performance of my life. I didn't cry anymore. Something had hardened inside me, a protective shell forming around my heart. Amanda called daily, worried about my emotional state. "You don't have to do this alone," she insisted. "I can be there when he arrives." "No," I replied firmly. "This is between James and me. I need to face him alone." When Friday finally arrived, I dressed carefully in a blue dress James had always loved, applied makeup to hide the shadows under my eyes, and prepared a pot roast that filled the house with a deceptively welcoming aroma. The evidence folder sat hidden in a kitchen drawer, like a loaded gun waiting to be fired. At 6:30, I heard his key in the lock. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained steady as I stirred the gravy on the stove. "Something smells amazing," James called, setting down his suitcase in the hallway. I turned, wearing a smile that felt foreign on my face. "Welcome home. How was the training?" He approached, kissing my cheek casually. "Intensive. Lots of new compliance procedures to learn." The lie rolled off his tongue so effortlessly it almost impressed me. "But the company put us up in a nice hotel, so that was a plus." "I bet," I replied, maintaining my smile. "Must have been exhausting, all that learning." James pulled a small box from his pocket. "I brought you something, from the hotel gift shop." I opened it to find a silver bracelet with a palm tree charm. "To remember Miami by," he said, a souvenir from his romantic getaway with another woman. The audacity nearly broke my carefully constructed composure. "It's lovely," I managed. "Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you get cleaned up?" Over pot roast and red wine. I listened to James fabricate an entire week of corporate training sessions, team-building exercises, and networking events. With each lie, my determination strengthened. I nodded in all the right places, asked appropriate questions, played the role of interested wife, while my stomach churned with disgust. As I served his favorite dessert, apple pie with vanilla ice cream. I finally made my move. It's strange, I said casually, but when I called your office on Monday to get the hotel information to send you some documents, they told me you were on vacation days, not at a training at all. The color drained from James's face. He set down his fork with a clatter. There must have been some confusion. Receptionist probably didn't have the updated schedule. That's what I thought too. I continued, my voice steady. But then I checked our credit card statement. The company didn't pay for your hotel, James. You did. And it wasn't a conference hotel. It was a couples resort. Sylvia, I can explain. I cut him off. And then there were the dinner reservations for two. The sunset cruise for couples. So many romantic experiences for a corporate training event. James's expression hardened from shock to defensiveness. You've been spying on me, going through my emails, checking credit card statements. His attempt to flip the script to make me the villain ignited a rage I'd been suppressing for days. I stood and retrieved the folder from the kitchen drawer. Jessica seems lovely, I said, sliding a photo across the table. Your coworker from marketing, right? The one you've been seeing for 6 months. His face contorted with anger and something else, relief perhaps at finally being caught. You had me followed? What kind of psycho does that? The kind married to a liar and a cheater? I replied, my voice rising despite my best efforts. Was any of it real, James? Our marriage, our plans? Or was I just a convenient cover while you built a life with her? It's not what you think. He started, but I cut him off again. It's exactly what I think. I have photos, James. Video. I know you're sharing the oceanfront suite. I know about the secret credit card you've been using to buy her gifts. I know everything. The facade crumbled entirely. James pushed back from the table, pacing our dining room like a caged animal. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Jessica, but you drove me to it, Sylvia. I drove you to it. The absurdity of his claim momentarily stunned me. You're always so focused on your work on those troubled kids who aren't even ours. We've been trying for a baby for years and nothing. Jessica is younger, and she wants the same things I do. Each word was a knife, but I refused to show how deeply they cut. So, instead of talking to me, instead of couples therapy, instead of divorce, you chose to live a double life, to lie to my face every day. I didn't want to hurt you, he said, his voice softening in a calculated way I now recognized as manipulation. You didn't want to hurt me. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. You've been hurting me for months, gaslighting me when I noticed changes, making me think I was crazy or needy for wanting my husband's attention. The argument escalated, years of unspoken resentments erupting like a volcano. James accused me of emotional neglect, of prioritizing my career over our marriage. I countered with his pattern of deception, his cowardice in not addressing problems directly. I'm going out, he finally declared, grabbing his keys. I need to clear my head. If you walk out that door, I said quietly, don't expect to find me here when you return. He hesitated for just a moment, then left without another word. The sound of the door closing behind him felt like the period at the end of a 7-year sentence. I sat alone at our dining table, surrounded by the evidence of my failed marriage, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not delicate tears, but body-racking sobs that left me gasping for air. When the storm passed, I called Amanda. He's gone, I said simply. It's all true. Everything. I'm coming over, she replied, no questions asked. That night, I slept in our guest room, unable to face the bed I had shared with a stranger wearing my husband's face. James didn't come home. The next morning, he returned looking haggard, still wearing yesterday's clothes. I was in the kitchen, calmly drinking coffee, my eyes swollen but dry. Sylvia, we need to talk. He began, his tone conciliatory. I made a terrible mistake. Jessica means nothing to me. It was just physical. A stupid midlife crisis. 6 months isn't a mistake, James. It's a choice. A series of choices made every day. I'll end it with her today, he promised, reaching for my hand across the counter. I pulled away. We can get counseling. Work through this. I love you, Syl. You're my wife. Part of me, a small, desperate part, wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to the life we'd built, to the dreams we'd shared. But the larger part, the part that had seen the tenderness in how he touched Jessica, knew better. I need time to think. I said, neither accepting nor rejecting his plea. This isn't something I can decide right now. James nodded, seemingly relieved I hadn't immediately thrown him out. Take all the time you need. I'll sleep in the guest room. We'll figure this out. As he showered and changed, I sat motionless, wondering how to tell our friends, our families. The humiliation of it all washed over me in waves. Everyone would know. Everyone would pity me. Poor Sylvia, whose husband found someone better. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. James hovered around the edges of our home, attempting small talk and apologetic gestures. I maintained a careful distance, non-committal to his promises of reform. On Sunday night, I made a decision that would change everything. Monday morning, while James was in the shower, I called Susan Taylor, a divorce attorney my sister had recommended. I need a consultation as soon as possible, I said quietly, watching the bathroom door. Today, if you have availability. 2 hours later, I sat in Susan's downtown office, surrounded by credentials and family photos. She was a striking woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Before we discuss anything else, she said, after hearing my situation, we need to protect your financial interests. Men like your husband often move assets when they realize divorce is imminent. I hadn't even considered this aspect. What do you mean? Check your joint accounts, investment portfolios, retirement funds. Make sure nothing has been transferred recently. That evening, I spent hours combing through our financial records. What I found made my blood run cold. Over the past 4 months, James had been systematically moving small amounts from our joint savings into a private account I didn't recognize. The total was nearly $30,000, money we had saved together for our future children's education. I photographed every transaction, adding it to my growing file of evidence. The betrayal had layers I was only beginning to uncover. Based on Susan's advice, I decided on a strategic approach. I would pretend to consider reconciliation while gathering information and protecting myself financially. It felt manipulative against my nature as someone who valued honesty. But James had changed the rules of our relationship, and I needed to protect myself. I think we should try counseling, I told James that night, forcing vulnerability into my voice. I can't promise anything, but I'm willing to try. The relief on his face was palpable. Absolutely. Whatever you need. I'll make appointments tomorrow. We started seeing Marshall, a couples therapist with an excellent reputation. During our sessions, James performed remorse perfectly. Tears at appropriate moments, heartfelt apologies, promises to rebuild trust. I played my role too, the wounded but hopeful wife, cautiously optimistic about saving our marriage. But outside those sessions, I watched James carefully. I noticed how he still took his phone to the bathroom, how he claimed to be working late, at least twice a week, how the promises to cut all contact with Jessica remained unverified. 3 weeks into our reconciliation, James missed a therapy appointment claiming a client emergency. That same evening, I checked his coat pockets while he showered and found a receipt for 2 drinks at a hotel bar downtown, purchased during the time our session was scheduled. I installed a tracking app on his phone while he slept, something I would have considered an unforgivable invasion of privacy months earlier. The next day, it showed him at Jessica's address for 2 hours in the middle of the workday. How was work? I asked when he returned home with takeout and flowers. Hectic, he replied, kissing my cheek. Quarterly reports due. I barely had time for lunch. Each lie strengthened my resolve. This wasn't a man who had made a mistake. This was a man living a double life with no intention of changing. I continued building my case methodically. I photographed financial documents, recorded conversations where he admitted to the affair, kept a detailed log of his continuing deceptions. I opened my own bank account at a different bank and began transferring small amounts from my paychecks. I gathered our most important documents, birth certificates, marriage license, property deeds, and stored copies at Amanda's house. I researched apartments in my price range, focusing on areas close to my school. The turning point came 6 weeks into our supposed reconciliation. While using our shared laptop, I discovered an email confirmation James had forgotten to delete, a reservation for a weekend getaway in Vermont. For 3 weeks from now. The email mentioned a special anniversary celebration. James and Jessica had been together for nearly 8 months by then. He was planning to celebrate with her while telling me he was attending a financial conference. That night, I finalized my exit plan. I would leave while he was at work, taking only what was undeniably mine. I would file for divorce immediately with all my evidence organized and ready. I wrote a letter explaining exactly why I was leaving and what I knew about his continued relationship with Jessica. I detailed the financial deceptions I had uncovered. I explained that I deserved better than a husband who could lie so effortlessly, who could make promises of reconciliation while planning romantic getaways with his mistress. 2 days later, after James left for work, I called in sick and executed my plan. Amanda arrived with her SUV, and we quickly loaded my personal belongings: clothes, jewelry, books, mementos from before my marriage. I took exactly half the money from our joint savings account and left everything else untouched. I placed my letter on the kitchen counter along with my wedding and engagement rings. As a final act, I changed all my passwords and removed myself from our shared accounts. By noon, I was installed in Amanda's guest room. By 3, I had filed for divorce through Susan Taylor's office. By 5, my phone was exploding with calls and texts from James, who had returned home early to find me gone. "What the hell, Sylvia? Where are you?" His first voicemail, confusion dominant. "Please call me back. We can work this out." The second, plaintive. "You're overreacting. This is ridiculous." The third, angry. "If you think taking half our money and running away solves anything, you're making a huge mistake." The fourth, threatening. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked his number and social media accounts, creating a digital wall between us. The only communication would be through our lawyers. That evening, as Amanda and I shared a bottle of wine, she asked the question that had been hanging between us. "Are you okay?" I considered this carefully, searching my feelings beyond the adrenaline of the day's actions. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be." The first weeks after leaving James were the hardest. I moved from Amanda's guest room to a small 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood far from our marital home. The space felt both liberating and terrifyingly empty. No memories, no expectations, just blank walls waiting for a new story. Divorce proceedings began with clinical efficiency. Susan Taylor was a fierce advocate, presenting evidence of James's infidelity and financial deceptions to counter his claims that I had abandoned the marriage without cause. He hired an aggressive attorney who portrayed me as emotionally unstable, suggesting my work with troubled teens had made me paranoid and suspicious. "He's trying to control the narrative," Susan explained during one of our meetings. "Classic behavior for someone caught in the wrong. But we have facts on our side, not just interpretations." The legal battle became public knowledge among our social circle. Some friends chose sides immediately: his golf buddies, my college roommates. Others attempted neutrality, uncomfortable with the messiness of taking positions. I was surprised by who stood by me and who didn't. James's sister called to say she believed me and was disgusted by her brother's behavior. My closest work colleague stopped returning my texts after having lunch with James. The shame I initially felt began to transform into something else: a quiet anger, not just at James, but at the societal expectation that I should somehow feel embarrassed by his betrayal. I started therapy with Dr. Jenna Morris, who specialized in betrayal trauma. "What you're experiencing is a form of PTSD," she explained during our first session. "The person you trusted most violated that trust repeatedly. Your brain is trying to process not just the events, but the meaning behind them." In those early sessions, I struggled with self-blame. If I had been more attentive, more beautiful, more fertile, would he have stayed faithful? Dr. Morris helped me recognize these thoughts as symptoms, not truths. "His choices reflect his character, not your worth," she reminded me again and again, until I began to believe it. The divorce finalized faster than expected when James's attorney realized the strength of my evidence. We sold the house we had lovingly chosen together, splitting the proceeds. Each furniture pickup and document signing felt like severing another thread that had once connected our lives. On the day I received the final divorce decree, I sat alone in my apartment and allowed myself one last cry. Not for the man James had revealed himself to be, but for the death of the future I had once believed in. Children we would never have. Anniversaries we would never celebrate. A retirement in Maine that existed only in my imagination. Then I dried my tears and began the conscious work of rebuilding. I focused on my career, developing a new counseling program for teens dealing with parental divorce. The school board approved additional funding based on my proposal, and I was promoted to head counselor. I reconnected with friends James had subtly separated me from over the years. My college roommate Diane, who he claimed was too wild, my cousin Peter, whose jokes James found inappropriate. I realized how my social circle had gradually narrowed to people James approved of, a control mechanism I hadn't recognized until it was gone. I started taking a painting class on Thursday evenings, something I'd always wanted to try, but James had dismissed as impractical. My first attempts were terrible, but the joy of creating without judgment became a form of therapy. The instructor, a retired art teacher named Gloria, became an unexpected mentor. "In art, as in life," she told me, "sometimes you have to make a mess before you find your true vision." I joined a hiking group that explored trails around New England each weekend. The physical exertion helped process my emotions, and the changing landscapes reminded me that nothing, not pain, not seasons, remained static. Among these new friends who knew nothing of my past, I could simply be Sylvia. Not the woman whose husband cheated, not the betrayed wife, just me. Dating again felt impossible at first. The thought of trusting another person with my heart seemed like willful self-destruction. But a year after my divorce, I accepted a dinner invitation from Michael, a science teacher at my school, who had been patiently friendly without pressure. Our first date was awkward. I had forgotten how to do this, how to be open to possibility without expectation. But Michael's gentle humor and complete lack of pretense slowly dismantled my defenses. By our fifth date, I found myself laughing, genuinely present in the moment, rather than analyzing his every word for hidden meanings. "I've been divorced too," he told me over dessert one evening. "It changes you. Makes you more careful, but hopefully not closed off." I appreciated his honesty, his understanding that trust is built slowly after it's been shattered. We continued dating casually, both of us careful with boundaries and expectations. 15 months after leaving James, I was shopping downtown when I saw them, James and Jessica, coming out of a jewelry store. She was admiring something on her left hand, and his arm was around her waist. They looked happy, absorbed in each other. I ducked into a nearby cafe, heart racing, expecting the old pain to resurface. Instead, I felt nothing. Not anger, not jealousy, not regret. They were just two people whose choices had set me free from a marriage that had become a beautiful prison. When they passed by the cafe window, I didn't hide. James saw me, his step faltering momentarily. I nodded once, acknowledging his presence, but nothing more. He returned the nod, a flicker of something. Shame, regret, crossing his face before Jessica pulled him onward. That evening, I called Dr. Morris and told her about the encounter. "How did it make you feel?" she asked, as therapists do. "Like I was looking at strangers," I replied honestly. "Like a chapter that's completely closed." "That's significant progress," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "The truth is, betrayal changed me fundamentally. I'm more cautious now, more attuned to inconsistencies, more willing to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. But I'm also more authentic, less willing to shrink myself to accommodate another person's expectations. The woman who stayed silent while her husband lied to her face is gone. In her place is someone stronger, someone who values truth above comfort, someone who knows her worth isn't determined by another person's capacity for loyalty. If you're watching this and recognizing your own story and mine, know that the pain does eventually subside. The shame belongs to the person who betrayed you, not to you. The future you imagined may be gone, but the one you build yourself can be even more fulfilling. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your worth. And remember that healing isn't linear. Some days will feel like backsliding, but the overall trajectory is forward. I would never have chosen this path, but standing here now, I can see how each painful step led me back to myself. A self I had gradually lost in the shadows of my marriage. That is perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads to finding what you truly need. Have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after betrayal? What helped you heal and move forward? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you found strength in my journey, please like and subscribe to see more stories of resilience and growth. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are stronger than you know and worthy of honest love.